Hello, there we are. Hi, how are you? Happy Monday. Already into second week of May. Wow. So, yep, I wanted to say hello as people are hopping on. My name is Linda Downey. I'm a functional health practitioner, a transformational health coach. I really work with people on transforming their lives and their health, specifically around stress and overwhelm and what that does to their nervous system, and releasing things from the past that have people be stuck in patterns and behaviors and things that are really not serving them anymore. So that's who I am. And today's conversation is going to be about some patterns and behaviors about being, hi, Charm. Thank you for saying hello. So I was just going to say, if you're hopping on, please say hello and maybe where you're from, or if you watch the replay later. But today's conversation is going to be about when we get stuck in certain negative, I'm going to call them negative because they don't feel good and they do work against us. When we get stuck in patterns like that in our life with ourselves or with other people, one place to look about what's happening behind the scenes there is what I want you to think about today. So this conversation is really, let me frame it first before we dive in. So if you're new to me and my world, I've been talking for the past month or so about energy. And that's not just me, that's really the way that quantum physics looks at the world and at human beings, that we are energetic beings. So we all come from an energy source. There has to be energy moving through our body. And I don't mean like food energy, but an energy source moving through your body to keep you alive, right? That's your life force energy. And so what happens is when we always need an energy source. It's like a battery pack. We always need a source to be plugged into. Our preferred source would be life force energy, which would be God energy. It would be the energy of the universe, which is how we are designed to really live and operate. That would be the ideal source. But what happens is when we have things in our life, even right as we're born into a family, and we have dynamics already in place in that family or experiences that we go through, we start to disconnect from that life force energy and we start to get some energy from some other places. And that might look like guilt, the energy of guilt. So you might know people, or you might be someone yourself who always feels guilty, right? They're always saying, oh, I feel so guilty. Oh, I feel guilty. I should just do that. Oh, I don't want to do it, but I feel guilty if I don't. So let me go do that. So that's an energy of guilt. And when we're not plugged into our authentic life force, right? The energy of the universe, then we need these other sources to kind of keep us going. And guilt is a great energy source, but it's there because we're not really tapped into or practicing our authentic self. Let's say that, especially in the issue of guilt. I'm going to give you some other examples besides guilt, but let's use that one. And a lot of women, because I work with women and I talk to women all the time, that's a really common one, of feeling guilty. I feel guilty, if I'm not doing enough for my kids. I feel guilty if I'm not the homeroom mom at school. I feel guilty if I'm not working full time because I'm home with my kids. Whatever it is, a lot of guilt women have, right? So what happens is that drives, we get a lot of energy that way, but it's because we're really disconnected from our authentic true self, who, if we weren't operating out of guilt, we would make a different choice. But our conditioning and what we've learned is important, and what we've been told is the way we're supposed to show up, and all of that conditioning, and the title of my podcast is The Unconditioned Life, because releasing that conditioning is so powerful. So that conditioning is what causes us to feel guilty. And then we start getting our energy from that guilt. So guilt is one. Another one could be obligation, which is I think, kind of linked closely to guilt, right? Like, I'm obligated to do this. I'm obligated. Think of the roles that you play in your life, whether it's a spouse, a partner, a sibling, a daughter or a son, a parent, a coworker. Along with each of those roles, we have in our society, and you have personally in your mind, you have rules that you think go along with those roles. So you feel obligated. So there are times when you don't want to do something, but you feel obligated. What's interesting is these negative energy patterns, we always talk about them and we experience them as feelings. So you don't say, I'm thinking guilty or I'm thinking I'm obligated. You say, I feel obligated. I feel guilty, because the feeling is the language of our spirit. Feelings is the language of our soul, right? We don't talk about it in terms of how we think. We talk about it in terms of how we feel. And we make decisions, for the most part, unless you start to become really practiced at not, we make decisions based on how we feel. And then afterwards, we try to justify it with how we think. But if anybody's in sales, they say that all the time. People will buy something based on an emotion, right? If you're going to buy a house, you buy the house that makes you feel like you want to raise your children there, or it reminds you of your childhood house. Or if you want a car, you buy a car and it makes you feel like you're really cool, or you feel like you're young again. And then afterwards, you justify it with your thinking. So our feelings are very much tied into this loop. And these different, it is a big difference. Charm is saying there's a big difference there. Feelings and thinking are essentially different. Absolutely. That's the point, is that we operate from the feeling of it, and we don't really think about, the thinking part of it until we have to rationalize or justify the choices that we made based on how we feel. But what I want you to really know is there's like a negative energy that people, when they're used to getting their energy from these different other kinds of sources, rather than from being really connected to themselves and to that God life force energy. And I don't mean connected to it like saying prayers a lot or going to church. Those are sort of rules or external behaviors, but you can do that a lot and not be connected, because inside you still feel guilty and shameful about who you are, and you still feel unloved and all of that. So those are the things that disconnect you or me or anybody from the life force energy that's available to them. And so in order to keep an energy supply going, we are in these negative loops. What I want to say is it's almost like what comes first, the chicken or the egg. So we start in these negative loops, like we start doing behaviors and making choices that are not authentically true and that are coping, obligation, shame, guilt, anything like that is not really in alignment with us and with, how we would be if we were really getting our source from God. When we're making choices there, we create a pattern, and now we're disconnected. So we need more of that energy. We need more of those patterns in order to get the energy in our body. But here's the thing. When your energy power pack is negative behaviors like that in different relationships with people, that's where, as you get more and more disconnected from your own source, then more and more things show up in your life. Like there's going to be more lack. There's going to be more lack in your health. So in your physical body, there's going to be more lack. There's going to be more lack in your relationships, meaning lack of true connection, lack of real joy, lack of really feeling authentic with that, with other people, even the most important relationships in your life. So you kind of have this feeling of like, it's surface. We don't really connect. We don't really share. And that's because the energy that's in that relationship is based on things like guilt. Like, you have the other person guilted into doing things, or the relationship is based on, I expect this, and so we're both doing that, but it's not coming from a place of authenticity. That's what I want you to notice. We can want to do things for each other. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you're doing it out of guilt, obligation, all of that kind of place, all of those kinds of places, then you're not really being authentic. And now you're disconnecting from your true energy source. And now you need to do more of that. I hope that's making sense. I had to chew on it a bit when I was learning this and really digging into this and looking at my own relationships. Yeah, so Charm says these feelings can keep us from saying no when no is the better option or choice. Exactly. Like sometimes you want to say no to, you know, being the one to host the party, or you want to say no to your spouse for something, or you want to say no to, just think of any example in your life, but we don't because we think we're supposed to say yes. So the rules that we have around being a good person and a nice person, those rules take precedence. But the more we pay attention to those rules rather than our authentic self, the more we get our energy from those negative loops. And here's what I want you to think about. Think about any time, like if you were ever in a relationship that wasn't a good relationship and it ended, right? And you may be thinking it's a good thing it ended. Like we always were fighting. It wasn't a good relationship. It was toxic. But when it ends, there's such a void, right? It's most of the time when toxic relationships end, there's a big lag time where people really are in the void because they don't have something giving them that. It's negative energy, definitely negative energy, but it's feeding them, right? You get kind of fed from, when there's toxicity and when there's fighting. Just look at people, just look at social media. People really plug into the things that they want to jump on about, to complain about, to point out the problems, right? To make judgments on. Judgment is a negative energy pattern that a lot of people really, really are in. Judgment about everything. So you can feel when something ends and there's that unplugging from that relationship, but now it's like, I don't have my energy source power pack. And I've had clients start to work with me like, I don't even understand why I'm thinking about him all the time, because it was a bad relationship and he was terrible to me, but then they'll say, but I feel so lonely without him, or I feel like I loved him, or I feel like he loved me. So again, there's the feeling, right? And that's the language of our spirit, is our emotions. So we feel these different things, but if we're not plugged into the right energy source, we're feeling things and then craving more of that because this gives us our energy. Yes, Charm says it's toxic but familiar. Yeah, everything that I'm saying, you've probably heard, maybe even with some other terms like, just coping patterns and trauma patterns and, toxic but familiar, like Charm said. But I wanted to shine a spotlight on this from a different angle. So normally the spotlight is on like the psychology of it, right? Like you're craving this relationship because you don't feel loved, so you keep working at, if I do this more then he'll love me, and if I do this more. And that's the psychology of it. What I want to shine the light on, just to think about, is the energetic backdrop of what's going on, the energy behind the scenes. Like, what is your or my or our power pack source, because we are all energy, 100%. We're much more energy than we are solid matter. So where is that energy coming from? So the more you make choices to fulfill a gap or a lack, the more you're pulled away from the preferred energy source, which is life force energy coming from the universe, coming from God. That's the preferred source. But the more you pull yourself away, the more you need the other sources, which is why it's so uncomfortable. There's really a period of time that's uncomfortable when you end a toxic relationship, or when you start to stand up for yourself, and the other person or people that you've been in these patterns with, they're expecting the guilt pattern, they're expecting the obligation pattern, they're expecting whatever it is, the pattern that you're in, that's a pattern for them too. So when we stop participating in that, that's why it's very uncomfortable. And I know for myself, like when a relationship ends, there's like even if you haven't lived together for 6 months, but you find yourself always thinking about that person, or you're, stalking them on social media, or you're doing whatever, it's because there's still an energy connection, and you still are getting some of your energy source from that. If you don't do what you need to do to shift your energy towards your preferred power source, towards universal energy. But if you're not doing that, like you just ended the relationship because you knew it just got so bad, or maybe the other person ended the relationship and you're kind of left hanging, and you don't know how to reconnect to your life force energy. If you don't know how to do that, then you don't know how to do that. So all you know how to do is to find the next version of the same negative pattern, the next version of a guilt obligation relationship, or the next version of, something like that, judgment. So this is why I've been talking about energy for the whole past month, because the background of everything is your energy. What is your energy operating from? How is your energy moving in your body? Because the things that you have in your, thanks, Charm's complimenting me over here, but I'm hoping that this is making sense to you. So I guess it's landing well for Charm. But what was I going to say? When you're experiencing anything in your human experience, so your physical body is our human experience, the circumstances in your life, think of the relationships with people that you're in. It might be your children, it might be your siblings, people you haven't talked to, you don't talk to them anymore, or you feel like I always do everything and they treat me badly, right? That's a pattern. When that is showing up, anything that's showing up in your physical body or your physical life circumstances, your money is an energetic, it's an expression of energy. I know it's a solid thing, it's paper, just like our body is solid, but our body is a representative of our energy. Our money and our wealth and abundance is also representative of our energy. So how you're managing your energy, where you're getting it from, is going to determine what's showing up in your life. That's a really big difference. Mostly we think what I think and feel comes from what's in my life. It's actually the opposite. What you're feeling and thinking and the way that you're managing your energy is causing the outcomes in your health and in your life circumstances and in your relationships. It's like flipping everything that you've thought of on your ear, on its ear, not on your ear, on its ear. So that's what I really wanted to talk to you tonight about, is understanding that a reason why you may be seeing the same kinds of patterns. And I talked mostly tonight about relationships, but it could be patterns in your job. It could be like you keep winding up in jobs with different people, different companies, but the same issues show up. Or there are patterns in your family, between your kids, between your siblings, between your parents, that no matter what happens, maybe it gets better and then boom, something happens and it's right back to we're not talking to each other, or there's a lot of blame and judgment. There's an energy that exists that the people who are participating in kind of need until they learn how to get their energy just in and of themselves. Because when we're not getting it in and of ourselves, we're looking outward for outward sources. When we look inward for an inward source, the inward source is our true self and our connection to the source, the universal source of love and God. When we look inward, that's where we can get our energy. But as long as we're looking outward, we're not getting our energy there. We're getting it from these relationships. And 99.9% of the time, that energy is coming from more negative types of patterns, not from really fulfilling types of patterns. Could be definitely fulfilling types of patterns, but a lot of times when you feel stuck, it's not because it's a feel-good pattern, it's because it's a negative pattern. And those negative energy source patterns are depleting your physical body. They're depleting your health. That keeps pain in your body. That keeps autoimmune issues turned on and your symptoms flared up. That keeps your immune system from tracking down cancer cells and handling them. That keeps your relationships with a wall between you, anything like that. So if you have any thoughts on that, Charm, I thank you so much for commenting here and listening. And I appreciate it when I know somebody's actually there and I'm making a difference. Otherwise, I feel like I'm talking to myself. So I appreciate that. And if anybody else has any questions, I'll definitely look back later in all the places that this is streaming. And that kind of energy work, that spiritual work, is a huge part of what I do with my clients. And if you want to have any conversation about that and what that looks like, I'm happy to do that as well. Deb, I don't know, do I say DeVry or Devry? Thank you. Thank you for listening. I'm going to say Devry. I think that's how it looks to me. So thank you for listening in. Okay? All right. I'll see you again later this week, and I'll see you over some coffee a few mornings this week. Have a good night. Oh, yeah. So I was just about to click off. Charm says, and so this is a great comment. Charm says she was in a church that was toxic for her. When she was there, she broke out with acne and developed high blood pressure. And when she left, she got herself back. And I love that example because a lot of people might think, well, church wouldn't be a problem. But it can be any group, any organization. And there's plenty of groups and organizations that, on the surface, they're doing good things, or you think because it's a church, well, the church is going to be good. But actually what's going on is really out of alignment. There's a lot of judgment. There's a lot of whatever. So that's a great example. Thank you, Charm. Okay, I'm going to say good night because I have a call starting in 5 minutes, and I will see you again this week. Take care.